Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something very old, very quiet and oddly light. A bowl. A very empty bowl. It's just sitting there, under a drip of water in some forgotten courtyard. The stone around it is slick with moss. The rain's been gone for hours, but the dripping continues, as if time forgot to stop. You're the only one here, but somehow it feels like the bowl has been waiting. And you probably won't survive this, because surviving requires effort, and tonight, effort is cancelled. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're joining from somewhere new, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always read them with a cup of tea. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are walking, not fast, not slow, just walking. Your steps don't echo. The floor beneath you is soft, almost forgiving. It's dusk or maybe dawn. A breeze passes and forgets to announce itself. There are no signs, no clocks, no other voices. And then you see it, a wide wooden platform under the eaves of a weathered temple. A bowl sits at the center, placed like an offering. But there's nothing in it, not even dust. Just air. You sit beside it, cross-legged, unsure if you're intruding. But the bowl doesn't seem to mind. It's wide, open, calm, as if it has been empty for a very long time, and very good at it. Zen practitioners have always loved bowls, but not for soup, for silence, for metaphor. They say the bowl is not meant to hold food, it's meant to hold your questions. And the best kind of question? The kind with no answer. You watch the surface of the bowl, the wind curls around it gently, and for a moment you feel like the bowl is breathing with you. In, out, no rush. There's a Zen koan about a student who visits a master, full of ideas, full of himself. He asks for enlightenment. The master pours him tea and keeps pouring. The cup overflows. The student panics. The master says, "You are like this cup. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" Nobody mentions what happened after, whether he drank the spilled tea or if he just stood there, soaking wet with metaphor. But tonight, you feel like the bowl is what comes after that story. Not empty like a lack, but empty like an invitation. The difference is quiet, but very real. Outside, you hear the faint creak of a wind chime that hasn't moved. It must be the bowl playing tricks on you. Back in the 13th century, deep in the forests of northern Vietnam, a king sat down and said, "I've ruled enough. I'm done." His name was Trần Nhân Tông. He was not only emperor of Dai Viet, but also the founder of the Truc Lum Zen tradition. One day he left the palace, walked into the bamboo groves, and never really came back. They say he wore no shoes. He left them behind at the gate, walked into the mist like a man late for a nap. He said something odd before leaving. Only when the bowl is truly empty can the mountains sit within it. No one knew what he meant, of course. Kings don't explain themselves, but monks repeated it like a mantra. Some believed he'd return to the palace in disguise, sweeping floors. Others said he became the wind itself. The bowl in front of you now, is that mountain or the mist? Spiritual researchers are still debating whether meditation can alter the brain's default mode network. Some say it decreases mind wandering, others insist it enhances self-awareness. But maybe, in the middle of those arguments, there's just a bowl. Sitting. Breathing. Not caring who's right. Your hand moves toward it. You don't touch it, but the air shifts. And suddenly you remember a monk's joke. Why do we meditate? To be less annoying. The candlelight flickers from inside the temple. The door is slightly open and someone, maybe no one, is sitting in there. Breathing like you, listening like you, noticing like you. Maybe they saw the bowl too, or maybe they're the one who put it there. The bowl hasn't moved, it never will. That's its secret. Stillness so total it makes movement look foolish. You remember a time, maybe last year, maybe 10 years ago, when you tried to fix everything, solve the puzzle, figure it all out, like a hungry student asking too many questions and not noticing the tea all over the floor. But tonight, your mind isn't full. It's finally sort of open, like this bowl. You wonder what would happen if someone whispered into it. Would it echo? Would it reply? Some say enlightenment is when the bowl hears you back. There's a leaf resting just beside its curve. Not inside, never quite inside. You decide not to touch it. Some mysteries deserve their nap. And then it rains again, but this time it's not rain, it's just the sound of rain, like the memory of a soft apology. No puddles form, The bowl stays dry. You close your eyes and feel your breath slow down into something deeper than sleep. Almost like arriving, almost like staying, but mostly like nothing at all. You're still seated beside the bowl, but time has shifted just a little, not forward or backward, just sideways. Like a breath you forgot you were holding, now slipping out of your lungs without asking for permission. There's a strange scent in the air now, not incense, older, wetter, like bark after rain or robes that have dried too many times in mountain air. You glance again at the bowl and nothing's changed, but it feels heavier somehow, still empty, still light, but now it carries the weight of stories. One of them arrives quietly, like mist threading through pine branches. The story of Trunyan Tong. Imagine a king. Not the storybook kind with a jeweled goblet and fur-lined wisdom, but one who'd rather be barefoot than worshipped. Trunyan Tong ruled during a time of chaos and war. Twice, he drove back Mole invasions. Twice he stood where men expected him to rule with fire. Instead, he ruled with space. At age 41, he stepped down, gave the crown to his son, then shaved his head and walked into Yentu Mountain, alone, unarmed, unbothered. He didn't bring gold, he didn't write a farewell letter, he just stopped being king. Imagine that, stepping away from noise, from power, from your name itself, and not to escape but to return, not to hide but to hold nothing. He formed the Truklam Zen lineage, Vietnamese Buddhism's homegrown branch. It mixed Mahayana insight with a local flavor, more bamboo, more silence, less chanting. In the text that survived him, you can still hear him chuckle between the lines. He once wrote, "The body is a dewdrop on a lotus leaf. Be still and let it slide." Scholars argue about how much influence he had. Some claim he changed Vietnamese Buddhism forever. Others think his legend outgrew his actual impact. But what's more interesting is how he disappeared. Not dramatically, just gradually. Like a bowl slowly becoming invisible in the dark. Still there, still whole, but blending into the nothing around it. You imagine yourself walking that same trail into the forest, leaving behind your name, your passwords, the anxious tabs still open in your mind. You picture putting them down, one by one, like a pack too heavy for this narrow path. Even your ambitions start to feel like borrowed clothes. He didn't need a sermon, the forest was enough. Back in the temple courtyard, you notice a spider has built a web across a low beam. It sways with the breeze, perfectly centered, useless, glorious. You wonder if the spider sees it as a trap or as a song. That's the thing about perspective, it doesn't explain itself. Nearby, you hear the faint clack of wooden clappers, maybe a monk signaling the evening sit. Or maybe it's your thoughts, trying to remind you that the world keeps moving even when you're still. But here's the paradox. Nothing has ever stopped anything faster than stillness. Spiritual researchers still debate whether long-term meditation leads to structural neuroplasticity. Words like cortical thickness and prefrontal activation get thrown around with impressive seriousness. But none of them have tried sitting under a tree for 12 hours with a bowl in their lap, just waiting for a leaf to land. Trunyan Tong did. Maybe not the leaf part, but definitely the sitting. In winter, monks would find him perched on a rock, robes thin, smile warm. He believed in thin, the Vietnamese word for Zen, but also in the absence of needing to believe anything at all. Tonight, you sit beside him in spirit, or maybe he's sitting beside you. Hard to say. There's only the bowl between you, and neither of you has touched it yet. You remember something else. A novice once asked the master why his teachings were so hard to grasp. The master replied, "Because you're grasping." The bowl didn't laugh, but it wanted to. You breathe. You let it be. The moon begins to appear, halfway hidden behind the temple's roof tiles. It looks a little like a bowl itself, upturned, glowing faintly. And you remember that in some old Buddhist rituals, monks would offer rice to the moon, not because the moon needed it, but because you did. Because sometimes giving away something simple, like a bowl of food to a star, is the only way to remind yourself that not everything has to make sense to be beautiful. There's a small plaque on one of the temple columns, barely visible in the dark. You lean in to read it. The writing is faded but legible. The bowl was never empty. You just looked too fast. And suddenly that feels true. You've rushed through so many things, meals, relationships, decisions, dreams, always assuming the bowl was empty unless something was overflowing. But now you look again. It holds air, scent, echo, time, dust motes, the breath between your thoughts. Everything that doesn't shout to be noticed. You lean back against the wall, the stone cool and kind. There's a rustling in the trees, a sound like footsteps or memory, but it passes, just like that. And you don't follow it. You stay, with the bowl, with the absence, with the odd fullness of letting things go. You blink slowly and it's darker now, the kind of dark that doesn't bother explaining itself. The bowl is still there, of course, calm, indifferent, almost smug in its own stillness. But now beside it, something else. A line of stone set into the ground, leading toward the edge of the courtyard and disappearing under a row of tall bamboo. You get up, because naturally, you want to see where that goes. Maybe it leads to answers. Maybe it leads to more questions. Either way, your feet are already moving. The stones are uneven but smooth, worn down by decades of steps, maybe centuries. Each one cold and quiet under your soles. And as you walk, there's that faint sound again. Not rain, not wind, but the kind of silence that sounds like it might be hiding something interesting. You follow it to a garden, small and enclosed, with nothing but bamboo, moss, and one old man in robes bowing to a tree. You freeze, not because it's alarming, but because he's doing it with such sincerity, like the bamboo just gave a very good Dharma talk. He turns, and for a moment your instinct is to look away. His eyes are impossibly calm. Not blank, just not chasing anything. He gives a slight nod, then goes back to bowing to the tree. You want to ask why, but something stops you. Probably the bowl still echoing in your ribs. Later, you hear a whispered version of the story. The monk believed the bamboo was once a master. Not metaphorically, literally. Said he could hear lessons in the way the stalks moved in the wind. Thought one of them might have been his old teacher, reborn to test his humility. So he bowed, every day, rain or not. The bamboo never bowed back, but neither did it interrupt. He's not famous, you won't find him in the texts, but he exists somewhere in the footnotes of Zen, the ones written in gesture instead of ink. Spiritual traditions often collect eccentricities like this, stories of masters who talk to rocks, whisper to frogs, leave bowls out for ghosts. In Zen, those aren't bugs, they're features. Because really, what is the proper response to existence? A spreadsheet or a bow? You find yourself sitting beside the bamboo now, watching it gently sway in the night. It's moving without trying. You wonder what your life would look like if it did the same. What would shift if you stopped trying to explain yourself all the time? There's a Japanese Zen concept you may have heard whispered in meditation halls. Mushin. No mind. It doesn't mean your brain dead. It means you act without clinging. A state where you move like the bamboo, responsive but not reactive. Alive, but not overthinking it. You're not sure if you're there yet, but tonight you've definitely slowed the overthinking down to a gentle crawl. A poetic limp, maybe. Nearby a small stone bench waits, with something placed gently on it, a folded cloth, probably used to cover alms bowls during the day. You sit beside it, unsure if you're interrupting some invisible ritual. Above you, the bamboo creaks, and for a second, it sounds almost like a sigh. Not sad, just ancient. The monk hasn't looked your way again, but somehow you feel his presence like gravity. Quiet, constant, humorous. As if the whole act of living was a cosmic joke, and he's just trying not to laugh too hard at it. Spiritual researchers still puzzle over why certain Zen monks display such unusual behavior. Is it mental discipline? Is it mild insanity? One theory claims prolonged meditation might cause semantic looseness, where symbolic thinking blends with the literal. But what if that's not a defect, but an upgrade? What if bowing to a bamboo isn't a mistake, but a reunion? Back in the Soto Zen tradition, there's a story of a monk who refused to use doors. He climbed through windows for 40 years, not because he was rebellious, but because he believed the path to awakening must always surprise you. The head monk eventually gave him a ceremonial title, something like Abbot of Unexpected Entry. You smile, just a little, and somewhere behind you, the bowl, yes, the one still sitting in the courtyard, vibrates with that smile. Or maybe it's just the wind again. Or your thoughts pretending they're wind. Hard to say. The old man finally stands. He doesn't look your way, but you hear his voice, so soft it might have been meant only for the bamboo. You cannot control the wind, but you can bow to it. Then he walks away, slowly, casually, as if there was never anything profound about any of it. You look back at the tree, it's still standing, naturally. Maybe teaching, maybe laughing. You close your eyes, feel your shoulders drop, your jaw unclench, your breath become less about survival and more about rhythm. And somewhere in the dark, a thought arrives uninvited. Maybe the whole world is a bowl, and you are just the air inside it. You lean into the bench, the cloth beside you shifts slightly, maybe from wind, maybe from meaning. The bamboo sways again, a leaf drops. It doesn't fall straight, it spirals, and no one corrects it. The leaf keeps spiraling long after it touches the ground, at least in your memory. You watch it settle onto the moss, then forget how to look away. Everything here asks for nothing. Not your opinion, not your productivity, not even your interpretation. It just is. Like a really good nap you accidentally fall into at 2 p.m., resisted at first, then utterly transformative. You get up again, eventually, and start walking a narrow path that winds behind the garden. The stone gives way to dirt, soft and slightly damp. You pass an old wooden gate that creaks even when it's not moving. Beyond it is a low building with sliding paper doors left partially open. You step inside, barefoot. The tatami mats are worn but warm, and something smells like ginger and wet wood. This is the old dining hall. No one eats here anymore, not really. But the bowls are still stacked in neat rows on the shelves, each one unique. Chipped, mismatched, glazed with care. One, though, catches your attention, small, round, beautifully made, and cracked clean down the center. Someone has repaired it with a line of gold lacquer. You've heard of this. Kintsugi, the Japanese art of mending broken pottery with gold, to honor its history, not hide it. But that's not the strange part. The strange part is that this temple, just a few decades ago, had a phase where they banned all utensils. No chopsticks, no spoons, just bowls and hands. Why? Because, according to a long-retired abbot with a sheepish smile, people were getting too good at pretending they were spiritual while being fussy about their soup. So the rule went out. No tools, just presence. Imagine it. Novices eating rice porridge with their fingers, sipping broth like cave monks, laughing quietly because everything felt silly and sacred at the same time. Spiritual researchers would later call this embodied mindfulness training, but the monks just called it breakfast. You sit at one of the low wooden tables, run your fingers along the carved surface. There are tiny notches, probably from someone anxiously poking their spoon into it decades before the ban. A rebellion recorded in splinters. The air feels thick with ghost conversations. You can almost hear them. A young monk whispering, "This is so unsanitary," and an elder replying, "So is thinking too much." You let yourself imagine being here during that time. No phone, no emails, just the steam rising from a communal pot, the gentle clink of ceramic bowls, the sound of chewing that nobody tries to hide. You'd be awkward at first, everyone would be. But after a while you'd realize the awkwardness is just ego in a bathrobe, refusing to get wet. One morning, legend says, a lay visitor entered the hall and refused to eat with his hands. He demanded a spoon. The head monk smiled, offered him one. It was carved out of air. The visitor blinked, then realized the spoon was imaginary. He sat down, stunned, and ate with his fingers in total silence. The monk later said, "Sometimes we give people what they ask for, so they can meet what they need." You run your thumb along the crack in the golden bowl again. It's warm. Not from heat, but from use. The odd thing is, people think emptiness means lack. But in Zen, emptiness means potential. A bowl isn't useful because it's ceramic. It's useful because it holds space. The more space, the more it can offer. The more broken, the more it can be honored. Spiritual researchers still wrestle with the relationship between tradition and innovation in monastic practice. They wonder whether rituals like utensil bans are effective or performative. But no one can deny the results. More present eating, more laughter, less spilled tea. You pause. Isn't that the point? To spend your days learning how to spill less and smile more. The paper doors slide further open with a whisper. A breeze moves through the room like someone exhaling after a long nap. Dust dances in the light like monks too shy to speak. You notice a small scroll pinned to the far wall. Ink faded, but the character's still clear enough. It reads, "Even the hungry can taste silence." You look again at the golden cracked bowl. Empty, of course, but it hums in your palm like it remembers soup. Or sorrow. Or a joke so good it made someone choke on tofu. You return it to the shelf, gently, with both hands. As you walk out, your hands brush together without thinking. They still smell a little like wood and mischief. You're back in the courtyard again. The bowl, the first one, the one that held only air, is still waiting. Maybe it was never really waiting. Maybe you were. You sit beside it again, and this time you don't need it to say anything. You just sit, and then it happens. The breeze picks up, the bamboo creaks in the distance, a distant bell rings 3 slow tones, but none of that feels like a message. It feels like breath. In, out, air, silence, no utensils, no mais, the bowl, and you. The bell fades and your breath catches its rhythm. 3 slow pulses like someone reminding you to return, not to the world but to your own chest. The air tastes different now, cooler, more aware of its shape. And you think, maybe absurdly, I could live here. Not in the temple, not even in the courtyard, but inside this bowl. This quiet, this strange clarity that doesn't clarify anything. Behind you, footsteps, soft, unhurried, likely barefoot. You don't turn right away. The moment feels whole without more eyes in it. But when you finally glance back, a young monk is approaching, robes bunched at the ankles, carrying a small tray with 2 cups and a teapot. He sits beside you like someone who's always been beside you. The tea is poured without a word. Steam rises and curls like a lazy dragon that's forgotten what it was guarding. The monk finally speaks. Have you ever held something so gently, it disappeared? You look down. The cup is warm in your hands, not heavy, not empty, not full, just there. You sip. It tastes like bark and memory. He chuckles. It's supposed to be bitter. You nod. It's perfect. And then he tells you a story. It doesn't start with once upon a time, but with a deep breath and a twinkle of trouble behind his eyes. There was a master, he begins, Ajahn Chah from Thailand. He used to drink from a glass every day and say, "This glass is already broken." Students thought he was being dramatic, but he'd smile and continue, "Because it's already broken, I can enjoy it. I don't cling. When it breaks, I'll say, 'Ah, yes, of course.'" You pause, cup at your lips. The tea seems to nod along with you. Ajahn Chah was one of the great Thai forest masters. He taught impermanence not as an abstract concept, but as the most intimate companion you could ever have. He said your breath was already a goodbye, that every sip, every smile, every bowl of rice should be taken as if it's the last, and loved because of it. His monastery was full of oddities. One year, a wild monkey took residence on the roof and mimicked meditation. The monks didn't chase it away. Ajahn Chah simply said, "Good posture." Another year, a visiting scholar asked if enlightenment could be explained through neuroscience. The master blinked once and replied, "Yes, but it wouldn't be true." Spiritual researchers still reference Ajahn Chah's teachings in psychology journals. Some believe his approach, letting go through awareness, reduces attachment anxiety. Others debate whether his metaphors translate into Western frameworks of trauma processing. But in the tea steamed tonight, none of that matters. The cup is already cracked. That's why it shines in your hand. The young monk looks at your cup and says gently, "Don't look at the tea. Look at the space between sips." You don't respond. You just breathe, and there it is. That space. Not quite silence, not quite thought. Like standing between 2 pages of a book and realizing you prefer the margin. A breeze slides through again, catching the edge of the tray, and for a second you think it might tip. But it doesn't. It just flirts with disaster and laughs at your heart's tiny lurch. The monk pours more tea. "If it spills," he says, "then we'll have to drink it from the ground. Sometimes that's where the best tea ends up." You look down at the bowl again, still empty, or still holding everything. You're not sure anymore. Ajahn Chah once said the bowl isn't there to be filled. It's there to remind you what you don't need. That every possession you have is already broken, every plan already unraveling, and that freedom comes when you stop begging things to stay whole. You sip again. The cup is lighter now. "Why do you think we drink tea so slowly in the temple?" the monk asks. You raise an eyebrow. "Because fast tea is rude?" He laughs softly. "No, because it disappears either way. We just want to say goodbye properly." Your gaze drifts to the candle burning gently near the doorway. The flame barely moves, like it knows you're watching, like it's trying not to startle the shadows. The monk finishes his tea and stands. "I'm going to check the garden. The bamboo sometimes needs reminding that it's loved." He says it without irony, without performance, just truth delivered in a cup-shaped tone. You watch him disappear behind the paper screen, his robe catching the light like a passing thought. And for a long time, you don't move. You just sit with the bowl, the cup, the tea you've already forgotten the taste of, and the odd fullness inside your chest that feels like something broke, in a beautiful way. Your hand rests on the edge of the tray. It's still warm where the cup sat. You close your eyes, feel your breath land on that space between sips, and in the quiet, a new thought arrives. Maybe your life isn't meant to be filled. Maybe it's meant to be held, lightly, like tea or breath, or the bowl that held only air. You remain there for a while, not so much sitting as quietly blending into the floorboards. It's strange how natural it feels, doing absolutely nothing. No phone to check, no message to answer, no clever remark to make. You are as still as the bowl beside you, and suddenly that feels like the highest aspiration you've ever had. But then your back reminds you that your spine is not, in fact, made of enlightenment. You shift slightly, your hand brushing against a cushion tucked behind the tray. A simple, round meditation cushion, zafu, if you're into labels. Black, slightly lumpy, and inviting in the way only slightly lumpy things can be. You pull it close and lean back against it, grateful and humble. The thought arises unprompted. Should monks be allowed to use pillows? You smile. It's not as ridiculous a question as it sounds. Long ago, in the early Tang dynasty, Buddhist monastics argued over the proper height and softness of sleeping materials. One faction, more ascetic, insisted that using anything beyond a folded robe was indulgent. Others, particularly in the Japanese Soto tradition, believed a humble cushion helped prevent back pain and kept the practitioner more mindful, not less. And somewhere in the ancient scrolls, there's an actual debate over whether a monk fell asleep too fast because his pillow was too comfortable. Some say it wasn't the pillow, it was the guilt. Others say it was enlightenment, or boredom. Spiritual researchers today would categorize this as sleep hygiene debate in monastic architecture. But back then, it was serious business. In this temple, apparently, the matter was settled with a joke. If your practice ends at the pillow, maybe it was never sitting up straight to begin with. Still, monks continued sneaking extra padding under their heads, whispering about backaches like rebellious teenagers. One master reportedly stuffed his zafu with rocks just to prove a point. Another confessed he once used rice husks, but only during the rainy season. You shift again and find yourself sympathizing with all of them. Comfort isn't the enemy of clarity, it's the cousin that never calls but shows up with snacks. You remember a story told in hushed tones during a retreat. A novice, brand new to temple life, was struggling with early morning meditation. Each day he'd be found slumped over, dozing off with spectacular theatricality. When the master finally confronted him, the novice bowed and admitted, "I dreamed of Buddha, but he told me to go back to sleep." No punishment followed, just a smile and the phrase, "Then Buddha clearly knows your capacity." The line became a running joke for years, but the novice, he eventually became one of the most attentive sitters in the Sangha. All because someone gave him space to nap before he learned to stay awake. You feel that now. That permission to not be perfect, to doze, to fidget, to sink into a cushion like it might explain life better than any scripture. The candlelight dims slightly as a passing breeze slips through the gaps in the walls. Shadows stretch and lean like sleepy monks stretching their legs under their robes. You notice the way the flame wobbles, not wildly, just enough to remind you that fire, like thought, doesn't need much to shift direction. You let your head rest against the cushion, no agenda, just gravity doing what it does best. It's funny, so much of spiritual life is built around this idea of letting go. Let go of craving, let go of ego, let go of attachments. But nobody ever tells you how, not precisely. Tonight though, the cushion offers an answer. Start with your shoulders, then your jaw, then your tongue. Then all the arguments you've rehearsed in your mind but never said out loud. Let them melt into the floorboards. Let them become the floorboards. Ajahn Chah used to say, you can't let go by trying to let go. You let go when you see that holding on is too heavy. He didn't mean that as a riddle. He meant it literally. Try clenching your fist for 10 minutes and see how spiritual you feel. The monks here probably debated that too. How long to sit, how to breathe. Whether sighing during meditation was rude or just inevitable. But eventually, they all ended up here, on a cushion, in silence, next to a bowl that refused to explain itself. You look at the bowl again. Still air, still you. And suddenly the whole idea of a goal feels exhausting. Maybe the bowl isn't a metaphor at all. Maybe it's just a bowl. Maybe that's the point. You lean back, feel the cushion crinkle slightly beneath you. It smells faintly of cedar and decades of sitting still. You imagine it has secrets, whispers absorbed from restless monks who didn't realize that stillness isn't achieved. It's remembered. From somewhere distant, a soft talk echoes. Perhaps a wooden block struck to mark the end of a sitting, or maybe someone dropped their enlightenment and didn't bother picking it up. You don't move. You don't need to. You're already cradled by the air inside the bowl. And the bowl isn't empty. It's just resting. Like you. You might have drifted off, or maybe not. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. Your body is warm, your thoughts are somewhere nearby, but not shouting like they usually do. Just floating like lazy koi in a temple pond. A few moments ago, or hours, who knows, you were on a cushion beside a bowl. Now you're walking again, but not quite walking. More like gliding through memory wrapped in incense. The corridor ahead is lined with paintings. Not grand scrolls or golden Buddhas, just small, worn portraits in ink and paper. Monks, mostly. Some stern, some smiling. One sticks out, a bald man with a lopsided grin and what looks suspiciously like sake in his hand. You step closer, and underneath the painting is a tiny plaque. Ikkyu, unapologetically enlightened, and slightly tipsy. You've heard of Ikkyu, maybe the mad monk, the poet who wrote love letters to the moon and scandalized the strict Zen world by, well, being honest. He drank, he wrote erotic poetry, he slept under bridges, and yet when he spoke of awakening, people listened. One of his most famous poems simply says, "Many paths lead from the foot of the mountain, but at the peak we all gaze at the same moon." And then one night, they say he reached enlightenment. Drunk. At least that's what the stories claim. He had been meditating for days, hungry, tired, slightly delirious, when a friend offered him a bottle of sake. He took one sip, stared at the moon, and burst out laughing. He said, "I finally get it. I am the cup and the wine and the drinker, and the hangover." Zen scholars debate this story, of course. Spiritual researchers often write him off as a rogue, a fringe case, a man too free with his metaphors. But the thing is, people remember him, not because he was scandalous, but because he was human. Achingly, hilariously human. You pass another painting of him, older now. He's holding a skull in one hand and a fan in the other, grinning like he just told a dirty joke at a funeral. The plaque below reads, "This is me in summer. Lighter, more dead." He wasn't mocking death. He was mocking our fear of it. Ikkyu believed that the moment you stop pretending to be holy is the moment you actually begin to understand holiness. He once said, "I'd rather smell the dung of a real cow than be perfumed by fake sandalwood." Harsh? Maybe, but he was tired of people using robes to hide their panic. He wanted something messier, something real. Tonight, with your feet brushing the smooth wooden floor of this memory temple, you get it. You're tired of pretending too. Tired of pretending you always know what to do. Tired of performing peace instead of feeling it. Tired of sitting perfectly upright in life while secretly slouching in your heart. Ikkyu wouldn't have cared if your back curved. He would have handed you a drink and said, "Now tell me the truth. When did you stop laughing?" The hallway ends at a small alcove where a single cushion sits in front of a low window. Outside, the moon hangs heavy and indifferent, like it's watched 1,000 Ikkyus giggle their way to wisdom. You sit, not to meditate, just to sit. The moonlight rests on your hands. There's an old saying in Soto Zen, "The way is vast and wide, why do you put on your robe at all?" Ikkyu might have answered, "Because it's cold and I spilled tea on my pants." He reminds you that spirituality doesn't need to be dry. It doesn't need to be sterile or saintly or sanitized. It can be muddy, sloppy, joyful, tea-stained, breathless with laughter. The moon rises slightly higher, slipping through the open window like it's peeking in just to check on you. You let it. You've stopped guarding yourself. You whisper, "I see you." And if Ikkyu were here, he might whisper back, "No, you don't. But nice try." You lean against the wooden frame. The cushion gives a little, like it's sighing in solidarity. Your eyes soften. Your heartbeat settles into something slow and delicious. And for the first time in a long time, you let yourself think, Maybe I don't need to be serious to be sincere. Maybe I don't need to chase clarity to be clear. Maybe I don't need to be anyone's idea of spiritual. I can just be the bowl, still cracked, still here, still full of air. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. It's quiet now. Not the kind of quiet that waits for something to happen, but the kind that tells you everything already did. A full quiet. The kind of silence that smells like old stone and unopened books. You're still sitting by the window where the moonlight crawls in like a house cat, claiming territory without apology. And just when you think this might be the end of the night's journey, something shifts. A sound. Soft, uncertain, like metal brushing against air. Then again. Clink, clink, clink. You follow it. Not because you're curious, okay, maybe a little, but because something about the rhythm pulls you like a thread being tugged gently from your spine. You move through the corridor, past more scrolls and shadows, and then you see it. A bell, hanging from a beam near the edge of the garden, swaying gently, but there's no wind and no rope. It's just ringing on its own. A low, hollow tone that folds into the night like sugar into warm tea. You stand and stare. The bell doesn't care. It just rings again. Clink. In the temple records, there's no mention of this bell being haunted. No grand legend about monks who couldn't move on. No magic spells. It's just a bell. Except, it's not. Years ago, one monk swore it only rang when someone needed to forgive something. Another said it rang when someone finally let go of a thought they didn't know they were holding. One of the elders called it the compassion bell, but never explained why. Spiritual researchers wouldn't know where to begin. No vibration triggers, no pressure sensors, no logic, just mystery. The most uncomfortable spiritual concept of all. You sit beneath it. The grass is slightly damp. The night air leans against your shoulders like a well-meaning friend who doesn't understand boundaries. You look up at the bell and whisper, "What are you trying to say?" The bell doesn't answer. Of course it doesn't. Zen isn't about getting answers. It's about noticing you were always asking the wrong questions. The bell rings again, and something inside you, that tired, dusty little corner you've kept politely hidden, shivers. Not in fear, in recognition. It's like the bell knows the weight of the thoughts you didn't bring here, the ones you thought you'd left behind. The to-do lists, the what-ifs, the unspoken arguments with people who no longer matter, but still rent space in your head with no security deposit. And as the bell hums its gentle note, you feel them loosen, just slightly, like the moment a knot gives up. You remember a koan, a Zen riddle, unsolvable on purpose. A monk asks the master, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" Most people interpret it as a metaphor for paradox. But tonight, under this bell, you wonder, maybe the answer is this silence. Maybe it's this bell ringing when no hand moves. Maybe it's your heart finally unclenching after pretending it wasn't clenched at all. In Japanese temples, it's customary to ring the bell once for every year of your life on New Year's Eve. A symbolic gesture to clear away 108 defilements. Anger, greed, pride, and all the other leftovers of being human. You look at this bell and count. 1, for the year you tried too hard. 2, for the year you gave up too fast. 3, for the love you misunderstood. 4, for the part of yourself that waited too long. 5, for right now. You stop counting. The numbers don't matter. Only the ringing does. Only the space between the rings. A breeze finally arrives. Not big, just enough to say hello. The bell swings slightly harder this time, like it's glad to have company. You close your eyes and let the sound carry you. This, you think, is what forgiveness must feel like. Not dramatic, not teary, just spacious. You lie back in the grass, arms folded beneath your head, and stare up at the night sky. The stars are barely there, too modest to show off. The moon is lower now, beginning its quiet descent. You imagine Ikkyu would laugh at you lying here like a sleepy philosopher. He might say something inappropriate and deeply wise. Something like, "Even the bell doesn't need to explain itself. Why should you?" And you'd nod. Because he's right. The bell rings one last time. Then nothing. Not silence exactly, but something better. The feeling of being completely unnecessary and completely welcome. You smile into the dark, and for the first time in what feels like 100 noisy years, you stop waiting for the next sound. You let the quiet win. Somewhere between the last bell and the next breath, you forget that you are trying to stay awake. It's not sleep, not exactly. more like falling into the folds of the present moment, slipping between the weave of here and now like loose thread, content to dangle. You wake up, not from sleep, but from thought, and you're no longer lying in the grass beneath the bell. You're inside. A hall, wide, dimly lit, lined with cushions. Low light filters in through paper windows. There are people here, monks, or maybe students, sitting in rows, perfectly still, some with eyes closed, others half-lidded, gazing downward like they're watching their breath perform a slow monologue. This is the Zendo, the meditation hall. You recognize it before you understand it, like a dream you forgot you had, but remember in full detail the moment your feet touch the mat. You're not sure if you're supposed to be here, but nobody notices you, or maybe they do, and they just don't mind. You step quietly to the far side of the room and sit on an empty cushion, cross-legged, back straight. You do your best impression of someone who belongs, but your thoughts, they did not get the memo. They arrive like a stampede of interns carrying mismatched clipboards. Am I doing this right? Should I be counting my breath? What if someone sees me thinking? Do I look too relaxed? Not relaxed enough? Classic internal chaos, a mental conga line. You almost laugh, but you don't. You're trying. A soft cough from someone 3 cushions away, then stillness again. And in this silent space, you remember a story, told in half whispers, late at night during retreat, always with a little guilty smile. There was a young novice who kept falling asleep during zazen. Every time the gong rang for meditation, his eyelids would stage a rebellion. He tried everything, cold water, mantras, even sitting on one foot. Nothing worked. One night, during an especially long sit, he nodded off and fell sideways, right onto the abbot. The room froze. The novice waited for the reprimand, but the abbot just chuckled. He helped the novice up, dusted off his robe, and said, "At least you fell in the right direction." The next morning, that novice was assigned to ring the meditation bell for the next year. No punishment, just rhythm. Sometimes Zen is like that. You sit, you sleep, you wake up laughing at your own stubbornness. Spiritual researchers continue to explore whether meditation increases gray matter density. They argue about hippocampal volume, amygdala reactivity, theta wave production. They use words like compliance and control groups and neuroplasticity. But none of them talk about the novice who dreamed of falling and landed in the arms of silence. Your legs begin to tingle. You shift slightly. No one flinches, because everyone here is busy chasing the same ghost, the quiet between 2 thoughts, and you're starting to catch glimpses of it. Tiny pauses, a moment before you swallow, the exact second you inhale, the flicker of candlelight on the floor that doesn't ask to be seen, but you see it anyway. This, it seems, is what meditation really teaches. Not how to escape your mind, but how to notice it before it starts shouting. A fly lands on your knee. You want to swat it? You don't. It stays, you breathe, it leaves. That's the whole story. Outside, rain begins, soft, indifferent, familiar. The sound taps gently on the wooden roof, and for a moment you swear it's meditating too. You open your eyes, just slightly. Across the hall, a monk is sitting completely still, except for his hand, which slowly, gracefully reaches into his robe and pulls out a small pillow. He sets it behind him, then sits again. No drama, no fuss, just mercy for the spine. You smile. The person next to you exhales deeply, maybe even snores. No one moves, no one reacts. There's a freedom here, a wild, radical, unglamorous permission to be however you are. You feel a little tired, a little aware, mostly at peace. You look down at your hands resting in your lap, one palm cradling the other, thumbs just barely touching, like the shape of a bowl, empty, warm, waiting for nothing. You stay like that, breathing, not trying to reach anything. And in the far corner of the Zendo, where no one's watching, you think you see a rock, a small smooth stone, balanced perfectly on a cushion. Someone has placed it there as a joke, or as a lesson. Maybe both. You're still in the Zendo, but the air has shifted again, not colder, just deeper, as if every breath now comes from further inside you, pulled not from lungs, but from somewhere beneath language. Your eyes close, not because you're tired, though you might be, but because open eyes feel unnecessary here. Everything worth seeing is already within reach. And then, a voice. Soft, not urgent. More like someone narrating a dream they don't expect you to remember. Do you know what happens, the voice says, when a raindrop forgets to fall? You don't answer. The question doesn't require one. The voice continues. It floats just above the earth, heavy with arrival, but not quite ready. You picture it, a raindrop caught mid-fall, suspended, hesitant, like a soul on the edge of choosing, and maybe that's you. The Zendo fades, or transforms. Now you're in a small clearing open to the sky. The moon has taken center stage again, full and steady, but not boastful. You're lying back on the grass, not sure how you got here, but also not surprised. Nothing surprises you tonight. Not even a raindrop that refuses gravity. You look up, and there it is, just above you, glinting faintly in the moonlight, not falling, not rising, just there. Still. You reach up not to catch it, but to greet it. Your fingers brush nothing, of course, but you feel everything. There's a Zen story rarely told outside temples. A young monk, obsessed with enlightenment, prays every night under a waterfall. One night, he cries out, "Please let me awaken." Suddenly the waterfall stops, midstream, water frozen in midair like glass. The monk panics, not because the miracle happened, but because now he doesn't know what to do. He waits, hours, nothing moves. Finally, an old master passes by, sees him and says, "Oh, you broke it, you wanted too much." Then walks on, perfectly dry. The water resumed just after. The story has no punchline, but it sticks to your ribs like rice. You think of that monk now, and the raindrop above you, and the many, many things you've asked for that paused your life midstream. The jobs, the relationships, the need to know what's next. Maybe your raindrop never fell because you kept asking it to prove itself. Spiritual researchers still argue whether anticipation affects neural activity more than the actual reward. There's something called prediction error. The brain gets more dopamine from the hope than the thing itself. But in this moonlit clearing, with a single stubborn drop of sky hanging above your face, none of that matters. You're not hoping anymore. You're just watching, noticing. A breeze arrives, delicate as a sigh. The drop wobbles. For a moment you think it might finally fall. It doesn't. You let go of the thought. Instead you breathe, in through your nose, out through your lips, like you're giving the air somewhere to go. And finally, the drop lets go, but not toward the ground. It floats sideways, into you, not onto your skin, not in your eye, into you. A small, precise moment of recognition, like a forgotten memory of being water. You smile, because suddenly the mystery makes perfect sense. And then, just as quickly, it doesn't. And you don't care. You roll onto your side. The grass is cool, a little damp. The earth holds your body without asking questions. You wonder how many monks over the centuries have slept just like this, half in dream, half in dharma, cloaked in air and simplicity. They say that in Zen, the moment you stop trying to understand is the moment you begin to live. That understanding is just a very polite form of clinging. You stare at your hand. There's no drop there, but you still feel it. Somewhere near your chest, something has softened, like a knot loosening in its sleep. You turn your head and see the temple lights still glowing faintly in the distance. A safe place, a still place, but not the only place. You are not waiting anymore, not even for the next bell. You are finally falling, not asleep, not apart, just falling. The way a raindrop does when it remembers that gravity is not the enemy, just the invitation. You're not sure how long you lay there, cradled by grass and gravity, but when you sit up again, the moon has shifted. It's no longer hovering directly overhead. It's wandered off behind a cloud, like it needed a nap of its own. The night air has cooled, but not in an unfriendly way. More like a blanket being adjusted, tucked in by invisible hands. You stand slowly. Your body, heavier now, but only because you've let go of so many things. The kind of heaviness that feels earned. Grounded. You stretch, spine clicking like a wooden floor settling. Then you notice them. Shoes, not yours. Someone else's sandals, left beside a low stone step that leads back toward the temple. They're old, worn smooth at the heel, and this is important, pointing outward toward the path, not inward. Zen monks leave their shoes at the threshold of the zendo, always pointed inward. It's respectful, a quiet way of saying I'm staying. But when someone knows they're not coming back, they turn them out. It's not dramatic, it's not sad, it's just clear. These sandals belong to someone who is gone. You kneel beside them instinctively, as if expecting the owner to return at any moment, but of course they won't. That's the point. In a monastery in Korea, there's a story of a monk who left no note, no goodbye, no final teaching. Just his sandals, turned outward. They found his robe folded on a bench, his bowl washed and dried. And that was all. People argued afterward, naturally. Was it suicide? Was it symbolic? One junior monk even suggested maybe he just went to the market. But the abbot smiled and said, no, he walked into the mountain. The mountain will explain. You imagine doing the same. Not out of sadness, not out of fear, but out of a deep, resonant enough. Enough words, enough searching, enough self. You touch the sandals gently, as if they might whisper something to you. And in a way they do. Not in words, in direction. You look down the path they face. It's narrow, winding, shadowed by trees. The kind of path you'd miss if you weren't already quiet inside. And maybe that's the only requirement for seeing it, stillness. Spiritual researchers refer to this as a liminal moment, a threshold where the self redefines. Not a crisis, not an epiphany, just a subtle click. The door doesn't open, you become the doorway. You step beside the sandals, but you don't put them on. They're not yours. They've done their work, instead you walk forward, barefoot. The path is soft with pine needles and earth. Your steps make no sound, but the forest listens anyway. Trees lean inward like monks in discussion. And then you reach it, a clearing, circular, illuminated not by moon or torch, but by something softer, something internal. And at its center, a small wooden platform. And on that platform, a bowl. Not the bowl, another one. It's ceramic, slightly chipped, filled with still water that mirrors the night sky. But something about it feels familiar. You sit in front of it cross-legged, the way you did so many hours, or was it lifetimes, ago. And you wait, not for someone, not for meaning, just to see what happens when you stop needing anything to happen. A breeze stirs the surface of the water, the stars ripple, your breath slows, and just when you begin to wonder whether this is where the story ends, a memory arrives. Unexpected, gentle and glowing like the bowl before you. The sandals, the turned-out shoes, the quiet departures. They weren't escapes, they were arrivals. Arrivals into a version of self so light, so unburdened, that walking into the unknown became not heroic, but obvious. You don't move, you don't have to. You are in this moment, both the bowl and the space around it, both the sandals and the one who left them behind. And all the forest asks of you is to keep breathing, so you do. You're still by the water bowl, and something about its stillness makes your own feel more deliberate. You exhale slowly, not as a practice, not as a technique, but as something instinctive, like a leaf falling or a shadow lengthening across a wall. Then behind you, footsteps. Slow, careful. You don't turn, not because you're afraid, but because you already know who it is. Or at least, what kind. They sit beside you with barely a sound, and when you finally glance sideways, you see him, a man of indeterminate age, eyes clear but not bright, robes plain but perfectly wrapped. His fingers are stained with something orange, citrus perhaps, and he's holding a small peeled mandarin. He peels it slowly, segment by segment, like each piece is a sutra. Then in an act of radical generosity, he offers you one. You take it. It tastes like the exact opposite of trying. And that's when it hits you. You're sitting beside Bankei, the Zen master who once said, "Don't try to become enlightened, just notice you were never not." He preached about the unborn mind, that spacious awareness untouched by the narratives we carry around like soggy backpacks, the part of you that existed before your name, before your first disappointment, before ambition got confused with purpose. Bankei didn't care for rituals, he didn't chant, he didn't shave his head until much later. He once refused to give a formal Dharma talk, and instead stood in silence for an hour, eating an orange. When someone protested, he finally said, "You heard more than I could have said." The monks at the time didn't all appreciate this approach. Some called him lazy, others called him mad. But thousands came to see him anyway, and not to hear teachings, just to be near someone who wasn't trying so hard. Spiritual researchers have looked at his writings and scratched their heads. No structure, no defined method, no predictable arc. But what he offered was something modern therapy now reveres: presence without performance. Tonight, that presence sits beside you, quietly peeling fruit. You ask softly, "How do I find the unborn mind?" He looks up, not surprised by the question, but amused by the phrasing. "You didn't lose it," he says, smiling. "You covered it with effort." He hands you another segment. It's juicy, sweet, slightly tangy, like waking up from a lie you forgot you were telling yourself. Bankei turns to the bowl and studies the water. Most people, he murmurs, see their reflection and think it's their face. But the bowl doesn't show you what you are, it shows you what you believe you need to be. You pause. That one went straight to the ribs, he continues. When you let the water settle, it reflects nothing. Just sky. That's the unborn. You look down at the water, it ripples slightly, then stills, and sure enough the stars are gone. Just emptiness, just space. A thought arises. You almost reach for it, but Bankei gently taps your hand as if reminding you, let it pass. You smile. You look at him, really look. And he's not glowing. He's not levitating. He's just human. Breathing. Smelling faintly of citrus and old robes. And yet everything about him feels like a doorway. He stands slowly, brushing crumbs of peel from his lap. Before he leaves, he says, "You don't need to clean the bowl, just stop filling it." And he walks away. You don't follow. Instead, you look into the bowl again, half expecting something miraculous. But there's nothing. No vision, no message. Just water, still, flat, perfect. And suddenly you don't want anything else. You sit like that for a long time, letting the quiet do what centuries of advice couldn't. The forest hums. A breeze turns a leaf upside down. The stars return to the water. You don't flinch. You don't cling. You just breathe. And for a brief, precious moment, you forget you're ever trying to improve. You stay by the bowl long after Bankei disappears into the dark. Not out of expectation. Not because you're waiting for something else to happen, but because nothing else needs to. You lean back slightly, and the night leans with you. The trees creak, not ominously, more like they're adjusting their posture after a long sit. Something shifts in the air, like a blanket being pulled up just a little closer to your chin. And that's when you notice it, a faint smell. Not incense, not tea, smoke. You stand slowly, not alarmed, just curious. And then you see it in the distance, a small hut glowing orange at the seams, smoke curling upward like a lazy question mark. You walk toward it, barefoot still, the forest floor cool beneath you. When you reach the edge of the clearing, you stop. Because the hut is burning, but nothing is frantic. There's no panic, no screams, no buckets of water, just fire. Gentle. Almost polite. It eats the wooden frame slowly, deliberately, as if it were erasing a story that had already been told too many times. You stand there stunned by the quiet of it all, and then your eyes catch something inside, untouched. A scroll, hung on the back wall, framed in charred wood, still there, still whole. You step closer and yes, it's real. The flames lick the ceiling, embers fall in slow motion, but the scroll remains untouched, like the fire has decided it's off limits. You read it. If it burns, let it burn. If it stays, let it stay. There's no signature, just those words. You wonder who wrote it, who hung it, who trusted it enough to leave it behind. In Zen, stories like this are told half as warnings and half as miracles. One tale tells of a monk who burned his own hut during a lightning storm, not out of recklessness, but to remind himself that shelter isn't safety. That the moment you believe you're secure is the moment you stop listening. Another story, equally unbelievable, tells of a hermit whose hut burned down during the winter, but whose tea remained hot, untouched in the center of the ash. Scholars call these metaphors. Practitioners call them Tuesday. Spiritual researchers love to ask, how does attachment form? How can letting go reduce psychological suffering? They offer diagrams, brain scans, clinical trials. But tonight, in front of this burning hut and that impossible scroll, you realize something much simpler. Sometimes the thing that doesn't burn is you. You feel no fear watching the flames, just a strange kind of awe, like the awe of watching a relationship end, or a dream dissolve, or a version of yourself you no longer believe in finally fall apart, and not needing to rescue it. You whisper thank you, not sure to whom, maybe the hut, maybe the fire, maybe to the part of yourself that didn't try to interfere. The flames grow brighter, but not louder. They curl upward like a bow. A ceremonial goodbye. You take one step back, then another. Not out of fear, out of reverence. The hut collapses gently, not with a crash, with a sigh. And in the settling ash, the scroll still hangs. Tilted now, slightly singed at the edge, but still legible. You breathe in the smoke. It smells like cedar and old questions. You remember the broken bowl, the empty cup, the bell that rang itself. All of it led here, not to survival, not to understanding, but to this fire that didn't need your permission. You sit on the edge of the clearing. The heat brushes your cheeks but doesn't burn. The wind moves through your hair like a memory you forgot you were allowed to keep. And in that moment, something old in you crumbles too. A belief, a tightness, a should. It falls like dry wood and catches light. But instead of panic, relief. You whisper again, if it burns, let it burn. And for the first time in a long time, you mean it. The fire is mostly ash now. A few orange veins pulse at the base, but they aren't hungry anymore. They're just remembering warmth. Smoke drifts upward in slow spirals, softening everything, even the edges of your thoughts. You stand, not because you need to leave, but because staying feels like holding on to something that's already said goodbye. As you turn, the forest seems to lean out of your way. You walk, not with purpose, with presence. Every step presses into soft earth, and every breath brushes against branches that don't ask who you are. They've seen versions of you come and go like fog. And then, just ahead, the path curves into a clearing. And in the middle, seated calmly on a flat stone, is a man wrapped in rags, thin, serene, and smiling at absolutely nothing. This is Ryokan, the poet-monk, the one who gave away his possessions before anyone asked, the one who lived in a hut so small birds had to take turns sitting on the roof, the one who thanked the thief for stealing from him. Yes, that Ryokan. You don't want to disturb him, but he sees you anyway. Ah, he says softly, another thief of time. You smile, he pats the stone beside him. You sit, no introductions, no exchanges. He pulls something from his sleeve, a single rice cracker, slightly broken. He offers it to you. You take half. He eats the other, humming a note that might be approval or indigestion. Then he tells the story. One night, a thief came to my hut, he says, but I had nothing. No coins, no food, no treasures. So I gave him my robe. He left without a word. He looks at you. I sat naked in the cold, he continues, and thought, if only I could have given him the moon. You don't know whether to laugh or bow, so you do both, slightly. Spiritual researchers have called Ryokan's life an experiment in voluntary poverty. Others debate whether his minimalist living was devotion or simply the result of being deeply uninterested in ambition. But that doesn't seem to matter here. What matters is that the man beside you radiates a softness that feels more powerful than any armor you've ever worn. He doesn't preach, he doesn't teach, he just is. Quietly ridiculous, quietly free. You notice now that his feet are bare, dirty, yes, but with a kind of grace. The toes of someone who's never worn shoes out of obligation, the soles of someone who walks with the ground instead of on it. He reaches into his sleeve again, pulls out nothing, just air. He holds it like a gift. This, he says with wide eyes, is for you. You take the nothing with both hands. You nod solemnly. He nods back, and there it is again, the bowl. Invisible, weightless, and somehow full, not of food, of feeling. A breeze slips past you both, tugging at the rags of his robe. He laughs. Did you hear that? He asks. You listen. Wind, distant bells, leaves brushing each other like pages turning in a book you don't remember writing. I asked the mountain for advice once, Ryokan says. It said, be round, be quiet, let things grow on you. You don't ask what it means. You already feel it in your spine. He stands suddenly, stretching like an old tree that's decided to dance. Well, he says, you've stolen enough wisdom for one night. Then he turns and walks away, but not back down the path. Into the trees, not pushing them aside, just vanishing through them, like fog returning to sky. You sit there a little longer, holding your invisible gift. The wind rocks it gently in your palms. It doesn't spill. It doesn't explain itself. And now you know why. Ryokan wasn't empty. He just refused to be full of anything he couldn't share. You look at your hands, still open, still receiving, still full of nothing that somehow feels like everything. You sit with your hands cupped gently, holding Ryokan's invisible gift. No shape, no texture, just presence. The clearing is still. Even the wind seems to pause, as if unwilling to interrupt your stillness. Somewhere behind you, the forest exhales. A single leaf lets go of its branch, twirling like it doesn't care who's watching. You rise again, not with a start, with ease. The kind of motion that happens only when you've stopped asking yourself whether it's the right time to move. And now, ahead of you, the courtyard. Back where it all began. You walk slowly, familiar stones beneath your feet. The temple roof is still silhouetted against a sky the color of old parchment. The stars, now faint, flicker like they're winking before sleep. And there it is, at the center. The bowl, the one that held only air. You approach it, and something inside you shifts. Not drastically, but decisively. You're not returning. You're arriving. The bowl hasn't changed, but you have. You kneel beside it, not in reverence, in recognition. And now for the first time you lean in, close enough to see the fine cracks in its glaze, close enough to hear something. Not sound exactly, something else, breath, possibility. You exhale, a long, slow offering, and this time the bowl receives it. Because tonight, it's not empty. It's full of everything you brought with you. Every thought you set down, every silence you trusted, every teacher who never gave you a straight answer. Bankei's orange, the bell's mystery, the sandals pointed outward, the fire that burned but left you whole, the thief who took nothing but left the moon. All of it now gathered here, held gently in a shape you once thought meant absence. You reach out and lift the bowl. It's light. Of course it's light. You've carried heavier things in your chest for years. You walk slowly toward the low platform near the temple door. Place the bowl at the center, not as a conclusion, as a continuation. You sit beside it, cross-legged, like every monk, novice, and accidental philosopher who ever sat here before you. You don't close your eyes, you don't recite a mantra, you just breathe, softly, like the bowl, like the mountain, like the path that brought you here. Inhale, hold, release. The night stretches on. The stars blur and blink, lost in their own kind of meditation. And somewhere far away, or maybe inside you, a bell rings once. Just once. And the bowl hums in response, still holding air, still full, still waiting for nothing. Now just rest here. There's nowhere to go, nothing to fix, no part of you that needs to be more than this moment. Let the night soften around you like a blanket worn smooth by stories you've told yourself until they stop needing telling. You're here, and that's more than enough. Let your thoughts be like leaves in a bowl, brief, weightless, already letting go. Let your breath slow, even slower now. You've traveled far without moving. You've met masters who taught without speaking. You've been handed fruit, laughter, and nothing at all. And it was all perfect. The bowl didn't ask you to understand, it asked you to hold space, for silence, for lightness, for the strange miracle of being here, right now, without needing to be anything else. So rest, let your shoulders drop, let your jaw loosen, let your heartbeat take its time. You are not late, you are not behind, you are not unfinished, you are simply breathing. And the bowl that held only air, it's still here. It always was. Like peace, like presence, like sleep. When it arrives not as surrender but as return, so drift. And if you wake, let that waking be soft, like fog lifting from stone, like moonlight stepping down, like a bowl waiting.